Hi, in this video we're going to look at the images in a bit more detail from the Canon 5D Mark IV review. Hi, I'm Adam and welcome to First Man Photography, the channel that will help you take your photography to the next level. If you haven't done so yet, head over to firstmanphotography.com, fill in your details to join the email list, and I'll send you a free copy of the ebook on how to capture perfect exposure every time. Okay, let's get into this. So on Sunday, I finally released my review of the excellent Canon 5D Mark IV. I'm at the top, the light is absolutely incredible. The payoff, if you can see the sun there, is going to come below the cloud line very soon, and I think I'm going to be rewarded with some beautiful light. So I'm going to get that 5D Mark IV out and put it to what it's made for me, and that's landscape photography. Now, many of you have been enjoying that review and it had a bit of a vlog style to it, so if you haven't checked that out yet, make sure you check the link down below or at the end to watch that video. In this one, we're going to look at the images that I captured on that day in a bit more detail. We're going to get into the computer a little bit. We'll go over some of the settings, some of my thought process that I was going through when I captured the images. So let's get into the computer and we'll dig into it. So the first image was just as I was heading up Skiddaw Mountain, and it's this one here of the cow, which I took with the 400mm lens, just to give a little idea about what you can expect from wildlife photography. Now, this is not really wildlife, is it? It's a cow, but it was the best I had to hand that day. And actually, it's not the best shot in the world, because when I was filming, the cow was sort of just sitting nicely, but as soon as I went to take the shot, he started walking, so I had to follow him down the road, or down the lane a little bit to capture him. And then he never looked up again. So this is the shot I captured. It wasn't quite what I was looking for. I wanted to have a bit more of the mountain tops in the top of the image here, whereas really I just have the mountain in the background. So not a bad image, because it sort of shows the cow eating the grass, and it gives a bit of an idea of what you can do with this camera and that lens. This is handheld at f8 1/100th of a second, which is pretty slow for hand holding that lens, to be fair to me, and ISO 100. It sort of gives you an idea of what you can do with it, but not the best image that I've ever captured, but told the story for that review anyway. So let's move to the next one. And I decided that just because of those mountains in the background, I would capture this shot just to give a bit more of a wide angle on the scene with the cow. And as I said, he's still not looking up. And I do like that image because those mountains in the background with that light on it at this time of year, it was really working well for me. So with that one, I'm at 1/50th of a second because I'm at 70mm there, so a little bit wider. I'm comfortable hand holding that Tamron with that image stabilization at that shutter speed. Again, ISO 100, f8. Right, let's move on to the next one. Now this is an interesting one because I'm really happy with the scene, but the lighting or the light was very, very challenging, as you may have seen in the vlog. So it really put the Canon 5D Mark IV to the test in terms of dynamic range, because we have, as you can see, we have these real bright highlights in the sky and in the ground, and then you sort of have these shadow areas where the shadows are being cast by the clouds. I'm happy with the image. I love these light streaks coming through the clouds here, and that really made the image with these streaks of light hitting the ground all around as well. Just to give you an example of how challenging these conditions were, I'll move on to the next image here. Let's just go full screen. I'll move on to the next image. This was taken 2 stops under, because I did also try bracketing as well. This is just one image. That's not bracketed at all, that image. That is one image that's been edited and have the shadows brought out, the highlights brought down, that kind of thing. But that's 2 stops under that previous image, and you can still see the highlights on that water. The reflection off that water is blowing out even at 2 stops under. So it gives you some example of how challenging these lighting conditions were. So with that shot, I think the camera's done pretty well there. Let's have a little look at the settings on that one. And we're at ISO 100. I'm at 46mm, f8 and 1/100th of a second. Again, I'm hand holding on that one. So I'm actually pretty pleased with the shot. I like it, but yeah, it shows what a good dynamic range this camera has in probably the most challenging situation in terms of lighting and contrast that you're going to come across when shooting landscape photography. So let's move on to my next image. I did mention at the start of the review that I was going to be doing some macro photography. I'm hoping to capture a little bit of macro photography. It didn't actually make it into the review video or vlog because it didn't really fit the story, but I did capture this image of some mushrooms. For some reason, I'm an absolute sucker for mushroom shots. I don't know why. I recognise that they're not the most amazing subject in the world, but I like them. And in this shot, the lighting, that light that you saw in the previous shot was casting across these mushrooms, and you can see that reflected in the sort of front edge of these slightly damp mushrooms, and I'm quite happy with this shot. This is a rock here, which just adds a bit of different colour to the shot as well, and I'm pleased with that. I love the golden light on it, and this is an example of what you can do macro photography wise with this camera. Again, this is handheld, so let's have a look at the settings. I was at ISO 200 on that one, and I went to 1/200th of a second. I'm using the 100mm L macro lens from Canon there. Great lens. I have reviewed that before. I'll put the link down below if you want to check that out. But I'm happy with the image. If I had been taking more time about my macro that day, what I would do is probably pull some of the grass away from around the stems just to make those the mushrooms stand out a little bit more. But that's that, macro photography with a 5D Mark IV, where we move on to the next one, which is the panorama of that Derwent Water Keswick scene. Now, I mentioned this one a little bit later on in the review. So you might be thinking, well, I'm a landscape photographer. What does the autofocus system matter to me? Because I'm usually shooting in manual focus. Well, I've just earlier, a bit lower down the mountain, I didn't film it, but I shot a handheld panorama where I'm going around like this to get a big panoramic scene. And it was good because it focused so fast between each shot that it just made moving around almost one fluid movement. And I think my panorama is going to come out much smoother and a little bit better than I normally get. And you'll be sort of hard pressed to look at this image and find any of the joining marks, because it's almost, like I said in the video, one smooth movement all the way around because it focuses so fast. So you're not having to stop for very long at all, which just ends up in this cleaner, nicely joined image that Lightroom has produced. Sometimes you lose a little bit of impact of a panoramic image on a screen. Just to give you an example though, if we zoom in, you can see just how much detail is captured in the image on this panorama. So this is at sort of, I think it's at 100%, and we're zoomed in and you can see some detail, and I'm hand holding here, so it's not perfectly still or perfectly sharp, but it's not bad at all. And then you zoom out and that's the image you have. So I'm quite pleased with that image. I'll probably print it at some stage just to give myself an idea of what it's looking like. I've still got these light rays coming through the clouds onto Derwent Water there, and I like these snow-capped mountains over on this side. So there's a lot going on in that image and I'm pleased with it. Let's move on to the next one. Now, this image I mentioned as well in the vlog, where what I've done in this image is I've shot it vertically because I didn't think I would be able to zoom in enough with the 70mm lens that I was using. So I shot it vertically because I knew I could crop out a vertical or a landscape orientation shot from that vertical shot. And this is what I've done here. And it gives a great example of the that 30.4 megapixel resolution of this camera. Now, if we look closely, you've still got some great detail in there, even when you zoom in from this shot. If we go back into Lightroom here, and then we just double click or right click on there, and we'll create a virtual copy. And then from that virtual copy, if we go to develop settings and then reset it, you can see the original image that I've taken that black and white image out of. So we go into this one, and that's the image that I've cropped. So I've sort of cropped this area in the middle here, and then this is the image that I'm finally left with, having done a little bit of processing on that. So 70mm f8, 125th of a second, ISO 320 because I'm hand holding and I needed a bit more detail and speed in the shutter speed. And that's the image. I'm absolutely thrilled with this. I really am, because the resolution on here just lets you do that. Lets you end up with a landscape image which is taken from the portrait, the vertical shot, with more resolution. And that's still about a 4K image. So really chuffed with that, which is about 8 megapixels. So absolutely brilliant, chuffed with that. And we'll move on to the next one, which is the long exposure. I'm pleased with this image because I think as you sort of initially look at the image, you see the snow on the grass here, and it kind of leads you around this mountain, into the mountaintops here, and to this snow-capped mountain here as well. I went for ISO 100 with f11 to just get the shutter speed right, and I went for a 2-minute exposure on this one. I did actually want to do longer on this one. I was initially planning a sort of 4.5 minute, but I'm having a problem for some reason stacking my filters, which I've got a 10 stop and a 6 stop, which I stack to make 16 stops. I'm having a problem with them for some reason, and they're creating some funny elements in my image. So I've actually gone and purchased a 16 stop filter, which I can't wait to get. I'll review that and do some things with that when I get it. But I'm pleased with this image overall. Not a bad little shot. So let's move on to the next one. And this was the cover shot for the vlog or the review. So I'm chuffed with this one. I didn't know this thing was at the top of the mountain, so I just stuck the camera on there. And then this is actually taken with the 700D and the 10 to 18mm lens, which I use to shoot my vlogs. And that's what I captured this image with. I like the ice on here as well. That just adds to the whole story of the day. That beautiful sunset that you saw at the end of the day. And I'm pleased with the sort of product shot that this has turned out to be. I'd quite like Canon to get hold of this. I think it's a good shot, good promotion for them. I'm not working for Canon at all, as a little disclaimer, but I've always used Canon cameras, and I am happy with this 5D Mark IV. Quick look at the settings for this one, and we have ISO 1000 at 14mm, f11, and 1/500th of a second. So like I said in the video, the light was incredible at the end of the day on top of Skiddaw Mountain, and this was probably my favourite shot of the day. That light was streaking through the mountains, as you can see here, and the mountains are sort of blocking some of the light and just creating this really dramatic scene. And with those clouds that were sort of just above the sun at this point, as the sun was coming through this gap here in the clouds, added real drama to the image. There wasn't actually an obvious composition at the top of the mountain because it was gently sloped away from me, so there wasn't an obvious composition. So I zoomed in to 70mm, I think, for this one. Yep, 70mm. I'm at f8 just to get maximum sharpness. I don't have any particular foreground in that image, so there's no need to go any higher than f8. And then I'm working at 1/20th of a second, and I'm on the tripod for this shot, so 1/20th of a second is absolutely fine with that 2-second timer, keeping the camera nice and stationary for when I shoot this shot. So I'm really chuffed with that one. It came out really nicely, and really the light is just incredible. I'm really pleased with the way it's streaking through the mountains. Probably my favourite shot of the day, and a good example of what you can do landscape-wise with the Canon 5D Mark IV. Let's move on to the next one. And this is another panorama at the end of the day. And again, I've done this one handheld, just shooting around using that fast autofocus. This is what I mean though about, it's not the most obvious composition, because you have the mountain that I'm actually stood on here, which I couldn't really remove from the image. And then you have this little smaller peak here, sort of blocking some of your view of Bassenthwaite Lake here. And that's what that lake is. But it's still a nice shot. The snow adds something to it. That beautiful sunlight casting some real golden light over the sort of flatter land here. I'm pleased with that. I'll probably print that out as well at some stage. And that is the final shot from the day from my Canon 5D Mark IV review. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that and you found it useful, and it just gives you a bit more insight into what I was thinking whilst shooting these images on the day. Some of them were taken just to tell the story of this camera and highlight some of the benefits of this camera as well. So probably not my best work ever, but I am pleased with some of the shots, and I can't wait to get out more with this camera very, very soon. When I do, I will definitely film it as well, so you can see what I'm up to. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel for new videos every Wednesday and every Sunday. Please also leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of the images, and I'll see you on another video very soon. I'm Adam, this is First Man Photography, out.